What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. And the coverage of Karen Reed's trial continues as a juror has spoken out. We're going to watch that interview together and react to what he said. Karen Reed's father has made a statement that I found pretty interesting, and we're going to listen to what they're looking forward to now and what the next steps are for Karen Reed, her family, her team. We also have the first statement I've seen reported on from anybody from Michael Morrisy himself. And MSP has released a statement. So we're going to start following all this stuff, react. What does it mean? Where do we go from here? Answer your questions as usual. Let's get to it. So we are going to knock out a couple of the easy ones first, and then get to some of the interviews and statements that we are going to break down. But first, we're going to take a look at the statement made by the Massachusetts State Police. They extend their sincere condolences to the loved ones of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. The events of the last 3 years have challenged our department to thoroughly review our actions and take concrete steps to deliver advanced investigative training, ensure appropriate oversight, and enhance accountability. Under my direction as Colonel, the state police has and will continue to improve in these regards. Our focus remains on delivering excellent police services that reflect the value of professionalism and maintain public interest. Jeffrey Noble. So you can roll your eyes at that. You can say, yeah, right. You can say it's not going to happen. I don't know what the public sentiment is going to be with this statement. But let me tell you what this statement was not. Our cops are all good cops. They didn't do anything wrong. It was the bloggers and the public that wanted to twist things. Karen Reed's slimy, lying lawyers said we did things that we didn't do, and that other fellow officers in surrounding departments did things they never did. At least they didn't say that, because we've heard some of that. We've heard some, this is just wrong. This is the wrong verdict. Here's what should have happened. We've heard a lot of that. And I'm going to do my reaction to Proctor's interviews on another video, because I think there's more coming, which is just unbelievable to me, but we'll be doing that. We'll be saving that. I'm sure there are going to be more things coming out as well. I'm also recording some discussions with some other people that will give our breakdowns and reactions to the verdict. So there's going to be things released periodically. So feel free to tag them or tag me in them, DM them to me on Instagram or Twitter, as you guys already have. That's how I got all of the information I'm going to tell you about today. Yes, Alan Jackson was talking on Howie Carr 30 minutes ago. I don't know if it's still going, but I'll check that out as well. He had some interesting comments to make about Judge Cannoni in the part that I heard. But what does Michael Morrisy have to say about this? Well, some of the reports are that 5+ times people have been reaching out to District Attorney Michael Morrisy about his comment on the verdict. And he said, quote, "The jury has spoken," end quote. That is his comment. Again, not much, not as bad as it could have been, not as good as it could have been, but that's all we've gotten so far. At the time I am live here, not recording this, but live here, that's what we have from Michael Morrisy. The jury has spoken. Can't disagree with that, right? Definitely can't disagree with that. Okay, so I'm going to answer some questions, and then we're going to get to our first interview here. Pretty sure that those note cards of reasonable doubt played a big part in the deliberation. We're going to learn a lot from this juror about what worked and didn't work from the defense side and the prosecutor, I think. Hi, Peter. I emailed your email that is posted in each live. I'm trying to make a law in Florida in my son's name and would appreciate any advice. He was 18, spent 65 days in the BICU. Other driver got off. Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. It seems like really involved, so that might be why I haven't gotten to it yet. I don't remember seeing this email, so I will try to check it out. Izzy, what an objective juror, also based on what he said, you can tell that AJ highlighting the level of uncertainty one must reach in order to convict echoed in their deliberations. All right, I'm gonna hold off on answering anything else about the juror. Love when you said yesterday that you didn't know when you'd be seeing us again, as if you could stay away from your besties for long. At some point, I assume there will be a break, but that break is not today, folks. We are here. Let's take a listen. I really enjoyed listening to Karen Reed's father make this statement. I think there was a lot of emotion behind it, but also thought and projection and thought into the future, what he wants, what he wants to look like, what it should look like. I don't know if I said this already. Everybody hit that like button now. We're going to start this interview and take a listen to this statement made by Karen Reed's father.
Feeling very elated, grateful to God for this ending. It's been a long 3.5 years, long time coming. But while we've seen the worst in humanity over the last 3.5 years with the corruption, we've also seen the best in mankind, particularly the women. So many women out there, standouts at the courthouse over this week, in the hundreds. I know state police estimated there were about 3,000 people there today. And so many women identify with Karen because at some point in their lives, they have been objectified and dehumanized or victimized in some way or another. And with Karen, they see that strength and that courage to fight against the government that has, unlimited resources. And so it's been a great win for us. We've got, Karen's incredible fight, fortitude, strength, and willingness to persevere and not give in. And, she assembled a remarkable team of talented and passionate attorneys. David Yannetti was our first on board, then Alan Jackson and Liza Little from LA, and more recently, Bob Alessi. So we're just blessed to have this dream team of attorneys fighting for us. And I think a lot of that passion on their part, that expertise that was unshakable that they brought to the courtroom was because they knew Karen was factually innocent. And we're very fortunate. I mean, other folks who may find themselves in the throes of law enforcement and be factually innocent themselves may not have that fortune or good blessing to have this type of attorneys and this part of, this immensity of support out there. Again, just the people who have turned out in support for us is just very gratifying and heartwarming. And at a time in my...
And he's not wrong. A lot of people go through this, don't have the resources, don't have the public attention, don't have the public eye. It's incredibly sad. And as lawyers, we look around, it's like, oh, we want to do something about that. You can literally drive yourself nuts and run yourself ragged if you think you're going to be able to fix and solve every single case and every single problem. So it is just a sad reality of how it is and how the justice system needs to be made better, and law enforcement, how important law enforcement and prosecutors are with the public dollars they use to do this right. They're really supposed to be the first line of making sure innocent people don't end up in prison. And that's what was highlighted here. It's not the criminal defense attorney's fault that all the criminal defense attorneys don't just take every single case for free around the country for their entire career. That's not what's supposed to get us there, right? And that's kind of what he's discussing here. Postman said, I'm finally able to catch you live because I'm in France instead of my home in Australia. It's crazy that it is still light at 2034. Do you think there will be things revealed that lean more to Karen's guilt, or have we seen it all in that regard? Like, as time goes on, I don't know. I was really shocked at what was revealed after trial 1, before trial 2. Really surprised at the things that we did not know and that weren't presented in trial 1. So I in this case, I'm done guessing, if I'm being honest. Allie B from Tennessee, I'm still so emotional. The tears just won't stop. It's all happy tears, but goodness, the raw emotions after the verdict by Karen and her amazing team just got me. I do pray for John's family and that they find peace and justice is served. I will tell you this. I watched multiple times the reaction by her lawyers. There's just something about feeling the emotion they feel. And Alan Jackson, made a statement at some point, yesterday. It's one of the greatest professional moments of his life. Bob Alessi saying, we see the evidence up close and personal. This shouldn't be the end of it, but I don't know if it is. I mean, they are Yannetti crying like, some football players cry when the national anthem is being played. It's just that genuine, raw emotion and power. It's like just feels good to watch it. Even if you don't necessarily agree with it or don't think that she's factually innocent, just the hard work in somebody's profession and what they did to accomplish this goal. It's really something wild to be a part of and to watch.
My life over the last 3 years, I've lost a lot of respect for what goes on in some of these communities. So I'll leave it at that.
How has it been? You talked about the struggles. I'm sure it's been a very tough time. It's like 4 years that you and Karen and the family have been fighting. How has it been to fight the accusations, to have to fight that despite knowing what you and the family felt was true and the defense team, how has that been for you and the family?
The accusations really didn't trouble us. I drove that Karen's vehicle home that day. It was parked right here when it was seized by Michael Proctor, the now fired and disgraced Michael Proctor of the Massachusetts State Police. I know the condition of that taillight, and I know that the injuries to John O'Keefe, including those dog bites, were not the result of Karen Reed's vehicle backing into him. I drove it home in that snowstorm. So when you've got that belief.
Interesting to hear that, right? And not called as a witness. And we heard, will the Commonwealth call Mr. Reed? Will the defense call Mr. Reed? What will he testify to? Well, my guess is that would have been part of it if he was asked.
An assurance that your loved one is factually innocent, then you've got to fight with everything you've got to see this through to a just ending. And there have been times it's very, very difficult because law enforcement and the government has unlimited resources through their ability to tax people. And
did it feel so? Are you saying, did it feel to you like it was you against this entity that you guys were fighting, you and Karen and the family?
Well, there's no doubt about it. The law enforcement has power, and it's difficult to put down that power. But I think so many folks saw this situation for what it was, a setup, a frame-up, and push back. And when society pushes back, and you get courageous men and women who are willing to take a stand, a case in point would be Officer Nick Barrows, who was brought here on that Saturday and testified in court that the condition of that taillight was not as what was shown to him in court in the Sally Port of the Canton Police Department. So that's just one example. And, you look at the Department of Justice was involved in this case from the early on. They were the ones who hired the ARCA scientists. And it was those scientists that determined the injuries to John O'Keefe were not the result of being struck by Karen Reed's vehicle, or that Karen Reed's vehicle, the damage to it, all right, was the product of being struck by a 216-pound, 6'1" man. And yet, even with that type of strong, objective, independent evidence, and truly, they were hired by the Department of Defense, U.S. Attorney here in Massachusetts.
I find it wild that he has to say, truly, that is true. They were hired by the DOJ. It's like, yeah, that is true. But some people want to still act like it's not true. And Hank Brennan talking about how they actually are biased toward the defense and moving the ball that way. And they did get paid by the defense. Then they got paid even more and they were hired. But truly incredible. If you go watch, I think the first video I did with my dad on this case, we were both like, whoa. The feds hired experts that said it wasn't her hitting him with the car. That is something that has just become kind of commonplace to us. And we know it's true. And, it's just one of the things that we mention when we say it, but that is truly wild stuff. Valerie, Peter, did your wife follow the trial? Like, I would say she followed it in like a TikTok, Instagram reel level, where she knows enough about it. She caught a couple of my videos, but snippets here and there, didn't watch it all day, every day. She had like questions like that are the very initial questions when people first get into it. And I felt like that TikToker that somebody's like, tell me about the Karen Reed case. Like, do you have a week and a half? Would you appeal the OUI? Absolutely not. I cannot tell you how much of a win that is for the defense to end the way it did. Rebecca, Peter, you know me being devil's advocate and all. There's no closure for O'Keefe or his family. Just a verdict, no answer. Yeah, I don't think you're playing devil's advocate. I think everybody has to agree with that. But another injustice, two injustices wouldn't make it right? And that's what we had to avoid if there really wasn't enough evidence to prove Karen Reed did this.
They also provided us with the text of Michael Proctor. Without that, much of this might not have come to light.
Sure.
The idea that he's been fired from the Massachusetts State Police, the lead detective on this case, fired for his conduct.
How sharp is Karen Reed's dad? Like, he knows this case like the back of his hand. He's running through all the reasonable doubt.
His bias in this specific case, it's something that's remarkable. So there are some strong people out there, and some, all right, we're so, grateful to them all. Prayers, all right, from so many.
What in all these 4 years that you've been going through this ordeal, what has held your family together? Where has found? Obviously, Karen has had you as support? But how has the family come together? How hard has it been for the family?
Well, we're very mindful of our finite presence here on this earth. So, we are churchgoers, we're Roman Catholics, we're believers in Jesus Christ, his mother, and we are dedicated followers of the church, and we pray daily. And if you don't have that, there's something, that is very difficult then to come to grips with things. So we just continue to believe that God Almighty would see us through this. And he has, as you can see. I mean, this is a very glorious day for us in this family.
Overall, I know I spoke to your wife, Karen. How are you all feeling today after
Elated. I mean, for the last 3+ years, I've been in this house knowing the unlimited reach of the government. And always you hear a door shut, right? You hear a horn. You go to your window because you never know, all right, the next step they're apt to.
And it is true. And I mean, yes, it's a glorious day for them. Yes, it's a big win, but it was not all sunshine and rainbows, clearly. And it's not all over, right? It's not like everybody there is like, oh, okay, she won, I'm going to move on. It's just not. And I can't stress that enough. For these lawyers, for Karen Reed and her family, there's still a lot that is going to follow them after this case, good and bad, right? Good and bad, but there still will be bad.
To take. And so there's relief. It's finality to it all. And I thank so many hundreds of thousands of people who have come and said prayers for us, sent us texts, letters, flowers. Just so gratified. Again, I've seen the worst in mankind over the last 3.5 years, but I've seen the best in humanity.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure. Today, Karen said, and one of the things she said is that no one has fought harder for justice for John than she has. Would you be able to comment on that, on what she feels at and how she's been fighting for justice to find a real person?
Well, it's certainly not the task of this family, nor for Karen. I mean, for the idea that Karen fought back against these charges and fought vehemently and strongly, and we went into debt. She sold her house. She lost 2 jobs, Fidelity and at Bentley University, where she was an adjunct. Cashed out her 401. She fought to liberate herself, to free herself, and in so doing, freeing herself, essentially cast a light on, well, what happened then if it's not her? Don't forget, she's now been freed, all right? Even though the first trial, because the decision of the jury was not made public, twice she's been found not guilty of murder. And so, these jurors have been at it for hours in their deliberations and weeks listening to testimony.
And that's why, regardless of what anybody says and what we've kind of said the whole time, and just wait till we hear what the juror says about this, right? But Karen Reed does not have the ability to prove who did this. I know there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of experts, a lot of things they picked apart, things they maybe did or didn't prove. Was it a dog? Was it not a car? Did they prove those things or disprove those things? But that's why law enforcement proves and investigates crimes. They have the resources, they have the connections, they have the ability to get things that private citizens don't, even private lawyers don't. That's why I can't go file criminal charges against somebody, regardless if I get an investigator and I have unlimited money to try to do these things. There are just rules and procedures in place that is not private citizens or private lawyers' job. That is the job of law enforcement, the prosecuting offices in different jurisdictions.
And so, it's when she says she's fought for John O'Keefe, she's fought for her own freedom and getting back her name. And in so doing, it's opened up the eyes of those in the media and just casual observers. Why is she fighting so hard? She could take a plea, but she refused to ever take a plea for something she did not do.
Was there any ever?
And I mean, I liked his explanation. I think it's very honest. It's like fighting for John O'Keefe is fighting to free herself.
Any doubt?
Never.
In the family?
Never. Karen would have been the first to say to me, and I was with her at that hospital in the morning, if she had done something wrong, she would have said, Dad, I'll take my medicine. Never. There's never been any doubt. Karen Reed is factually innocent. All right. She was found not guilty, but I will tell you, she's factually innocent. Look at the body. Look at the wounds or lack of wounds, aside from the abrasions, right? From an animal, from a dog to his right arm, and to the deep laceration on the back of his head. There's nothing else. There's no bruises, broken bones, torn ligaments.
Look at him hit all of the biggest pieces of reasonable doubt. He's just lining them up, knocking them down like note cards. Does the defense talk with Cannoni after the result? They can. I doubt they will. I mean, Yannetti's probably going to see her again. I don't know how often the rest will. Rebecca said, what point I was trying to make is that people are celebrating the verdict. Yes, they should. It was the just verdict, but people also need to remember the loss. Yeah, and I think people have spoken about that. Sober, Peter, first time, long time. Can you please say, what's up, cuz, to my friend Velvet? She showed some interest in this case, and I'm trying to push your channel on her. Keep up the hard work. Velvet, it's smooth in here. It's smooth like velvet in here. Soft like velvet. Maybe velvet is softer than smooth, soft. I don't know. Peter, my son is in the 101st Airborne, deployed in the Middle East. His unit has been watching all your Karen Reed trial videos. That's insane. Thank you for your service. America's heroes there, truly fighting the good fight while I just sit in here. They give me the ability to sit here in a chair and talk in a microphone about this stuff. Hopefully people learn about our justice system and learn how important our rights are, that all of you are out there fighting the good fight for, and I'm just sitting here talking about them. Will they put any conditions on her probation, or just simply, if you're caught drinking and driving in the next year, you serve time? I worry they will be out to get her. I don't think she's going to really have this microscope on her from that perspective. Usually it's no alcohols, bars, and clubs, things like that. There are conditions of the probation. Usually, I don't know what they are in Massachusetts. I was not expecting her to get convicted of a DUI, so I really didn't look at that at all. Peter, besides the civil cases, what's the bad stuff to follow? I mean, Koberger is a big one over in Idaho happening. Adelson. I talked to Betterow, and I was kind of talking about Adelson. He's like, it's crazy that's not a bigger story. But yeah, Adelson over here in Florida. There's a lot of stuff down the pipe. Kirsty, Peter, can you tell us how you as a lawyer process and celebrate a victory of this magnitude? I would imagine it becomes a piece of you after all this. Yeah, you take so much. You learn so much from every trial you have, and you apply it to all your other cases, all your other trials. I have trouble celebrating victories. I really do. Like, I am almost, in case, the joke at the beginning of the video is like, I don't know when I'll see you guys again next. And then here I am the next day. That's just kind of how I am. I wake up the next day and I've got a new goal to achieve, a new step to try to take, to try to progress and continue to be successful each day and accomplishing things and accomplishing goals, which is actually a struggle of mine. But generally speaking, it's really big. It's really important. And you should always draw on it as you go forward. Build your confidence when you start to doubt yourself. I can do this. I did this. I fight for justice. Remind yourself you're doing things that are good, that are worth it, that are worthy of your time to do to the best of your ability. That's usually how I deal with it personally. What an emotional, a lot of people go celebrate, take a week off, go on vacation. I've done things like that as well. What an emotional roller coaster yesterday was. Shout out to my sis, Julie, who finally caved and caught up on trial in 2 weeks, thanks to your videos, Peter. I apologize, Julie, because they're a lot longer than my normal videos are. Like this one today will probably be right about an hour. That's where I like to keep it. Peter, can you describe how the family can civilly sue Karen when she was found not guilty? So it's different burdens. Even if she wasn't found guilty of the OUI or /DUI, they could still sue her because they only have to prove it by a preponderance of the evidence, which is like 50.1% versus reasonable doubt. And guess what? This juror we're about to hear from, he puts a percentage on reasonable doubt. What do you guess it is? What do you guess he has to say that the Commonwealth has to prove it? Is it 51%, 75, 90, 100%? What is it that he says? Put a guess on that. That's how civil is different. And they still would be able to go forward. But Karen Reed's got a lot of evidence from this case that she can use in the civil case as well. Let's listen to the last couple minutes of this interview, then we'll get to the juror.
If he was struck by a 6,000-pound SUV, which my daughter was driving, you'd see something below the knees, in the torso, around the chest. I mean, we're all reasonable people. Just look. You're out of Rhode Island, WJAR. You're former Rhode Island medical examiner, state medical examiner, Dr. Elizabeth Laposado, I hope I'm saying that correctly, came and testified. And she said those injuries were not consistent with getting hit by a car. So, when you look at the physics, the science, it's provided by ARCA, and then you look at the medical testimony and the medical evidence, whether it be from Dr. Elizabeth Posada or from the state of Massachusetts' own medical examiner, Dr. Scotty Bello. She said, that she could not conclude that he wasn't hit by a car. In other words, it's possible. And the abrasions to the arm. And so much so, she could not conclude the manner of death. She could not conclude it was homicide. So, the evidence is overwhelming, compelling, but still it took us 3.5 years and 2 trials.
Maybe last question for me. How is Karen feeling?
Elated.
What is the spirit? What is the spirit?
Elated. And also her attorneys. I mean, this was their fight too. I mean, the hours they put in, people see Bob Alessi or.
So he's about to explain the background of what a client sees, right? Because we in the public and the jury, they just see the finished product. After we've gotten it all put together, we've practiced, we've prepared, that's what they see. He's going to explain what it's like in the background, which we have talked a lot about on this channel. So you guys are all going to be like, yeah, same. We knew that.
Alan Jackson doing a cross. That cross, all right, an order of proof has to be developed over several days. You just can't go in cold. You have to develop that. And same thing with the summation. Alan Jackson's summation, which so many people remarked on, all right, was just, so much on the point. I mean, hours. I know he went through multiple iterations. So
multiple iterations of that closing, no surprise. And that's how it got whittled down and into that masterpiece that it was of a closing argument, and major improvement from trial one. It was still good trial one, but trial two was significantly better. That's hours of preparation and work. And think about who's doing it, right? Because a guy like Alan Jackson, he could sit there and be like, I'm a king, right? I'm a celebrity lawyer. I'm an LA lawyer. They brought me in. I'm a big shot. I'm slick. I don't need to listen to anybody. I know how to do this. I already did this trial one. I'm doing it again. I'm doing it my way. But it's not. He still takes the time to prepare, the hours to edit it, take people's advice, practice it for people, different iterations, different outlines in order to get it the best that it could possibly be going into that trial. And that takes hours, takes humility. I mean, he may not seem like a very humble guy when he comes out there with a lot of confidence and a bulldog mentality at trial, but I'll tell you the humility, the proof of the humility is in the work in the background, that what you see and how he treats the rest of the team.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Does the family want, because I know Karen says she wants justice for John. Does the family want the case reopened to figure out what happened to you?
We don't have that power to even, make that wish. We just don't. They have had the resources to look at this case over the last 3.5 years. Given they knew the evidence from ACA, they knew the evidence from the medical experts, they knew the public, all right, was upset. Overwhelmingly, the public overwhelmingly upset about what was going on here. Well, they've always had the resources to look at it. So it's, what they choose to do, they'll do. And if they don't, it's now been 3.5 years. How much of that evidence has been destroyed?
Yeah, it's like, what are we supposed to pat them on the back now for looking into it? They knew there were issues with this. They chose to do it this way. And that's the other problem. It's like everybody talking about reopening this. It's like, if they want to do the right thing, they would have already done that. Rebecca, thanks for all the service members that serve and have served this country. I am an Army brat. Thank you, Rebecca, for this super chat. And yes, echoed in our chat in spades. And I see everybody echoing that as well.
Who knows? So,
Would it be something that she would advocate for?
we just want our lives back. She's got her life back. She's
something that she's going to advocate for. And it's like, this is a good example of like what society thinks. And it's like, well, she's a bad person or not doing everything if she doesn't continue to fight and push them to open. It's like, listen. And this is, I don't know what Karen Reed would say, but this is a dad talking about his daughter. I don't care if she's an adult. And he's like, she wants her life back. Like her life was taken because of, in his mind, what the police did and what everybody did to her and setting her up and trying to pin it on her. And she wants her life back. Okay. I don't want, it's what I'm listening, right? I'm a dad to a daughter. She's not an adult, but I don't want her to spend the rest of her life fighting against these cops that will do anything to get her. I want her to have a happy life and move on with her life. That's what it seems like he wants. That's the vibe I'm getting.
She made a statement outside of the court today. I don't know if you were out there. It was incredible, wasn't it? By her fighting for her freedom, fighting for her factual innocence through multiple hearings over the last 3.5 years, 2 trials. That was her, if you will, her statement that not only am I factually innocent and I am being wrongfully accused and charged here. Other eyes need to be brought on this to look at this. So,
other eyes meaning the police need to be the police, feds or state, not Karen Reed. Karen Reed's not the police. Karen Reed's not the person that's going to go catch the person that did this, right? Her job was to prove she didn't do it. That's in her mind what she's thinking.
I'll let you go because I know you guys covered a lot already. Getting her life back, what does that even look like now?
I don't think our lives will ever be the same. I mean, this case started off, it was once a time we had trouble generating media interest in this. And now, it's become a national, if not international sensation. And why? Why? Is it because there's a Hollywood attorney involved?
They had trouble getting media interest. That's interesting. It's an interesting comment. Then something clicked. What was that?
A relatively young, successful woman? No, it's because of, all of the dynamics associated with that. What happened? A cop lost his life, found on the lawn of another cop. And you've seen much of the testimony, and then alleged cover-up, corruption, has all of the facets for something that's so intriguing as well as alarming. So, okay.
Thank you.
All right. So that's the end of that interview. Seems like a really great guy. Honestly, it's tough what they've been through. But it seems like they're going to move it in the right direction. All right. Before we get to the juror interview, I'm going to answer some questions. Peter, out to dinner last night, started talking to a guy about the Karen Reed. He said, I watched this guy called The Lawyer You Know. It was funny. You're everywhere. Gosh, I've been getting some of the strangest texts. I got to be honest. It's a weird world, man. I don't, it's like as a lawyer, I don't get imposter syndrome, but when it comes to like YouTube stuff, I still don't think anybody watches. It's the weirdest thing whenever somebody tells me that they watch. Hi, Peter. What will be invoked with Karen Reed's probation? I worry they will find any reason to violate her. Maybe we can get something that officially shows what are the conditions of her probation. I haven't seen that yet, so it's hard to comment on. Okay, I've been very interested in Karen, and I am hoping to become invested in Koberger trial. Peter, will you be following his trial? Absolutely. That was one of the first cases I followed, like when it was still a manhunt and they didn't know who did it. And then they arrest him and it's like no connection. It's so strange. Is the evidence light? That's a case that I have some thoughts on what I think is going to happen in that trial. It's a totally different dynamic now that it's a second judge and we've been with it a lot. I do have to catch up because I've been falling behind since Karen Reed really ratcheted up. If when they sue, can Karen introduce more info on the third-party culprit suspects she wasn't allowed to discuss in the criminal case? She can, but I'm not sure how much that would help her in a civil suit where John O'Keefe's family is suing her for wrongful death. If proof beyond a reasonable doubt equals 100%, Lori Vallow, judge, said that's not the case. So I'm going to hold this until we hear from the juror. How much money did all these trials cost the state? It had to be, easily over $1 million because we know this trial alone cost over $1 million. I'd guess probably $2 million. It's pretty insane for a DUI. In my opinion, the feds are coming back into the fray and there will be charges. I expect them to be RICO charges. If the feds come back into play, I think it's going to be more about law enforcement than it is about one individual third-party culprit. Do we know who the judge is for the civil case? I do not. And if her lawyers will represent her in that too, is it another jury trial? Totally different trial, probably by jury. And the insurance company usually hires defense lawyers when you are sued. Lawyer/TV personality Wendy Murphy called the jury idiots and said they should lose their citizenship. A lawyer attacking a jury like that, it's uncalled for. It's ignorant as well. It's uncalled for. It's ignorant. And that's how our justice system's set up. So I don't get that. AJ was on Howie Carr, spoke about how hard it was. Yes, I listened to some of it. I will listen to the rest at some point. How does the not guilty verdict affect the Paul O'Keefe wrongful death lawsuit? It would have been much better for the plaintiff's attorney, for the O'Keefe's attorneys if it was guilty, but it doesn't mean they automatically lose here. Most civil suits settle. And frankly, if it was me, I may just say, insurance company, if I'm Karen Reed, pay it. I want to be done with this. No admissions. I'm sure people are going to disagree with me about that and stand on principle, but I, like Mr. Reed, I would want to move on. Now, I'm sure there's going to be interviews and shows and books and all that. And, fine, do it. Get paid for it if people are interested in it. Get your life back on track. So much has been taken, and then move on. Addicted to your channel and help me understand the law. Thank you so much, Kimberly. All right, let's get to this juror interview. I found this incredibly fascinating.
Jason, the jury found Karen Reed not guilty on murder and manslaughter. Was it because they had reasonable doubt or because they thought she was innocent?
So I think for the jurors, there's a mix of some people think that she was definitely innocent, and the other people, there was a lot of reasonable doubt, at least to where we didn't want to convict her.
That's really interesting. So, could you give me a breakdown there? Roughly, what percentage of the jury felt she was innocent?
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think that she was innocent. It's hard to tell exactly what people think deep down. There was a lot of things thrown at us, of evidence. So it's hard to tell what truly.
So I appreciate that some people thought it was innocent, some people thought reasonable doubt, but he's just going to speak for himself about, what he felt, which I thought was good, a good call by him. By the way, in this interview, we learn about what was on that verdict slip, the butt dial or the false alarm verdict slip. We're going to find that out as well.
So you say in your head she was innocent. Does that mean you think she was framed by people inside that house?
It doesn't necessarily mean that. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to John. Really, I was only presented a limited scope of what happened at the night, and I could only base my opinion off of the evidence that was shown in the courtroom. So,
I mean, what an answer, right? What an answer. And this is what we were talking about throughout the entire first trial. Don't try to be the police. Don't try to be the prosecutor when you're the defense. You can't prove it. You don't have the ability to prove it. You didn't do the investigation. The investigation was so bad, it didn't provide you with what you would have needed to prove this case. And if that's what you're telling the jury, and they're sitting back there like juror number 4 here saying, I don't know who did it, but like maybe it was Karen instead, you say the I don't know who did it means we win. We win as the defense, hit not guilty. And the prosecutors have to say, we win only if we prove it was Karen, not if we disprove it was all these other people. And that's exactly how he answered it.
I don't really know if there was a cover up or not. I know that's the big conspiracy about it, but I don't really know. All I know is that there was a lot of holes in the investigation.
And you don't have to know, man. And the defense empowering the jury to know, hey, you don't have to know who did it. We don't know either. Could have been Higgins. Could have been a dog. It just couldn't have been Karen Reed. And if you feel the same way, it's not guilty. And that's how you know the theory and theme of the defense stuck in this juror's mind. And logically, he's like, that made sense. And it stuck with this juror throughout the process.
Whether they were deliberate holes or not deliberate holes, it's kind of hard from me sitting back to know that, what actually happened.
So what was the feeling of the jury? Because Alan Jackson and the other lawyers raised the issue that she was framed by cops and that they would have turned that house upside down if they really wanted to do an honest investigation, and that he was not hit by a car. He was attacked in that house, bitten by a dog, and then put outside to frame her. Did people on the jury, or some of them, buy that argument?
I think some of them bought that argument. It's just hard to tell, though, because whether or not we think that there was malicious intent, we were only presented with the facts that they didn't go into the house. So, there's an example.
It's like, we don't know, but what we do know is they didn't go in there. They didn't do their job. That's holes. That's reasonable doubt. That's not a good investigation. We don't know if there was malicious intent. This jury is very clearly saying, or this juror, I should say, is very clearly saying, I'm not saying this was a conspiracy. I'm not saying this was a cover-up. I'm not saying somebody inside 34 Fairview did something and dropped his body on the lawn. I'm not saying any of that, sir. I don't know what happened, and that means not guilty.
Example of reasonable doubt. So, there's other examples of reasonable doubt. So, even if you want to completely buy into the theory or not, that wasn't what we were tasked with. We were tasked with finding, convicting, or deciding on this person's fate based on the proof and the evidence that the Commonwealth was able to present. And there was a lot of holes in the investigation.
Yet you went many steps beyond that, because you say, in your view, she was innocent. What compels you to think that?
Well, one thing that I think that compels me is we did a lot of review of the tapes, and it seemed to me that the videos that we could see from the car after the alleged incident happened, that when we could see the taillight, it was lit up red where it shouldn't just have been red.
So, what does that tell you? What I say about the pictures, right, and the videos of the car? I'm not even going to try, because both lawyers are going to argue it's good for them. And what's the jury going to do? They're going to want, what does the jury trust more than anything? What do I always say about a jury trusting this more than anything, more than any other argument, more than some expert coming and explaining it to you? They trust their own eyes and ears. So they look, what do we see in this taillight? I see it lit up red. It couldn't have been red if it was smashed out after hitting John O'Keefe the way the Commonwealth said. He looked at it, he studied it, he trusted his own eyes. That's exactly what happened in this case. You make your argument as a lawyer. I think the ARCA witnesses did a great job explaining what it light up, what it not light up. But what do the pictures actually show? Because Hank Brennan put those pictures up there and was like, ha ha, that's our smoking gun, see? And Alan Jackson was like, ha ha, this is not what the taillight should look like. The jurors looked, they made their own decision. I like to see consistency with juries. I really do, because that helps learn. There is randomness. Every jury is different. It's not the end all be all. I get all that. But I like seeing consistencies, because that's really what you can build on as you do research. Did you see Petro backed into a car at verdict and broke taillight? I heard something about that. What is the difference between being innocent and being factually innocent? I think they're more talking the difference between being factually innocent and not guilty. Not guilty includes not proven. So they didn't prove that she did it. Factually innocent means it actually wasn't her. They proved it wasn't her. And this juror says he was all the way on the factually innocent side. Have you seen the AI babies of the law tubers? I have. Bertie, my 17-year-old and I watched the verdict with you. We only heard of Karen Read because of you. My daughter stationed in Germany, exactly the same. Karen Read could be any of us. It was the x-ray that sealed innocence for us. Thank you, Peter. Well, thank you for your daughter stationed in Germany, for her service. And it's awesome. I love when people tell me the whole family gets together and watches this case with us. 30,000 in the chat. A quarter of that likes. Let's do better. Everybody hit that like button if you haven't already.
So that leaves to me a conclusion of, well, how come it's red in this video after the alleged, collision happened, and then it's not. It doesn't have any red pieces where it should be red.
So in other words, you do not believe that SUV made contact with John O'Keefe?
I don't believe that the SUV.
That's the defense proving something. They have no burden of proof. They don't have to prove anything, but they did. They proved to this juror the SUV and that taillight never came into contact with John O'Keefe's arm, and you are sunk as a Commonwealth if that is true. And they proved it to him.
Made contact with John O'Keefe.
I don't believe that the SUV collided with John O'Keefe.
What was the initial vote with the jury when you first took your vote?
We didn't do an initial straw poll. The judge recommended to us in the courtroom that is not a good way to do it. We broke down, what we did is we broke down each charge, and we went from top to bottom and discussed everything thoroughly, and did our best to do right by the Karen Read and the Commonwealth.
Was there a division initially?
Yeah, there was a division.
There was a division. So they didn't do a straw poll, right? But you could tell from however the initial conversations happened, there was division. That's not uncommon. Most people don't see things exactly the same way. Now, some people, sometimes it does, and they're able to just get through it pretty quick. But there was division. So what becomes so important when there's division in the jury room? Closing arguments. You have to arm the jurors. If you're the Commonwealth, you have to arm the jurors who think Karen Read is guilty to go argue with the other jurors and pull them into their camp. If you're Alan Jackson, you have to arm the jurors that think she's not guilty or factually innocent with the information, they can go pull the jurors. What is reasonable doubt? Didn't they prove reasonable doubt to you as the languages that some jurors use? What do we think reasonable doubt is? And we're going to listen to this juror. And did Alan Jackson arm him with things to go and battle? And it's not biased. It's not a runaway jury. It's nothing like that. This is what lawyers do. This is the tool that is closing argument. Go tell them why you're right. And they can go be your mouthpiece and the mouthpiece of your client back there arguing with the other jurors. It doesn't have to be nasty arguing or bullying, but you're going to have to argue if everybody's disagreeing, right?
But that's what we're there to deliberate and talk about all the evidence. There was 2 months of us sitting there, them throwing all this information at us absorbing the information, going home, thinking about it, reviewing it in our heads, and we get to the deliberations, and now we have an opportunity to discuss. Some people went into the deliberations and they were still unsure after two months. And
how about unsure? What do you do with unsure people? You convince them. You help them get to sure. Or you convince them that the fact that they're unsure, what does that mean? What did Alan Jackson say that meant if you're not sure?
that makes sense because there was a lot of things going on. There's a lot of information. How much can you weigh one thing or another thing over,
Yeah. What about jurors who felt initially she was guilty? Were there any of them?
Yeah, there were a few.
So not just unsure jurors, but jurors who thought she was guilty. Isn't that important? Isn't that interesting?
Jurors that think that had thought that initially when they went into the deliberations, that was their standpoint, and that's what we were there to do, to talk through all that and bring up every single piece of evidence. Is there an angle of reasonable doubt to where we're not really sure? Like, are you really sure? Are you 100%, or are you 99.9%? If you're that 99%, we can't convict you.
How about that? You think Alan Jackson convinced him of anything in closing argument? 99.9% sure. Well, that's reasonable doubt. That's what he said. That was the thought of the jury back there. And by the way, there have been some judges that will allow people to say it doesn't have to be 100%. There is no, that I'm aware of, and definitely not in Florida, there's no specific percentage that you can say is reasonable doubt. We're not allowed to say 99%. We're definitely not allowed to say 100%. Usually judges will say it's not 100%, but they won't really let either lawyer make a percentage argument. So whatever they thought it was, based on the definitions they read, that's appropriate. This is not something that's going to be overturnable because maybe reasonable doubt is not 100%. But to a moral certainty that you go home and you're sure. Jackson convinced these jurors that 0.01% of being unsure is reasonable doubt. And this juror was looking for angles of reasonable doubt throughout. But here's what I'll say. This is, I'm taking it a step further, right? I'm making a reasonable inference from what he's saying. He didn't do that for himself. He didn't have to go to the 99.9% to get there himself because he told you he thinks she's factually innocent. So if he thinks she's innocent, he is using Alan Jackson's arguments of a moral certainty to be 100% to convince other jurors that they actually have reasonable doubt. That's what he's using this 99.9%. It's not himself. It's not internally. He doesn't have that struggle. He thinks she's innocent, and he's convincing other people they actually have some reasonable doubts. How about that? How about that working as a perfect law school problem of arming jurors with what they need to go back and make the arguments in your closing argument? You don't retell the whole story. You don't recap what every single witness said over the last 31 days. You don't do that. You give them note cards, things they can remember, go back and argue with these other jurors back there. Do you think that's doubt? Does this make you feel like maybe we're not 100% there? We're not morally certain there?
What brought the ones who felt she was guilty over to the not guilty side? Was there anything in particular that seemed to resonate with them?
You know, it's hard to tell from my position. You'd have to ask them about it. But in my opinion, I think it was just due to the poor investigation. There's just too many holes, and you know, it's hard to prove that the collision happened. So if there's reasonable doubt
Well,
that
if it did happen, it would have been easier to prove. Like I prove a collision happened in every one of my car accident cases, right? It's not that hard usually. Usually I get the other lawyers to agree with me before we even get to trial. But in this case, it was definitely difficult. And James Crow, I agree. That was the worst evidence. The Lexus taillight had the red LED lights. Glad they did not know that. Maureen said, I'd love to know their thoughts on the lawyer. Well, Maureen, you know, sometimes you ask and you shall receive.
that happened, or that there may have been foul play. You know, if there's room for that, then it's hard to come to a guilty verdict.
What?
Oh boy, did he get it. Golden Templite said he's the ideal juror. He's like, the fact that we even have these questions, sir, is reasonable doubt. And he's right. The fact that these questions even exist is reasonable doubt.
Happened when the jury initially said they had a verdict and
Here's the question everybody had. The false alarm verdict.
happened when the jury initially said they had a verdict and then said, oops, no, we don't. And then 15 minutes later, they said, oh, we do. What happened there?
So that actually is kind of interesting. So the envelope, it was sealed and it's locked away. It'll never be looked at. But on everything on that initial slip was the same as the slip that was presented.
But why did they pull it back?
The pulling the back was.
So what did he say? It was the same. It was the same. And that's great for appellate purposes. The fact that it was the same, nothing changed from the, oopsie verdict to the final verdict. That's important. That's very good. Michelle said there was a lawyer on the jury. It sounds like the guy was listening to the lawyer, LOL. Also a teacher and a nurse per Turtle Boy. Well, after what we know about the last lawyer that was almost on the jury and what she thought about it ending up on Karen Reed's team, that was a big mistake by Hank Brennan. I don't know if it was like an ego thing where he's like, I think I can convince a lawyer. Because if there really was a lawyer there, that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough. Liz said the same thing. Turtle Boy is reporting a lawyer on this jury again.
The same as the slip that was presented.
But why did they pull it back?
The pulling the back was for the OUI charge.
There was driving under the influence, essentially, drunk driving.
Yes, driving under the influence. We in our deliberations, we had decided there was enough evidence and proof that she was driving under the influence. And
So, how did the defense do? How did the lawyers do, in your view?
So here we go. You guys had the question. What do they think of the lawyers? Let's get our answer.
Her lawyers.
For her lawyers specifically, I think they all did. I think that all the lawyers on both sides did a really good job. All the
lawyers on both sides did a really good job. Generally speaking, unless somebody is like obviously a jerk, which some people may say, some of the lawyers here may have been, they generally say things like this. The lawyers did a great job. Sometimes there's a lawyer that's like overly impressive. They'll shout out, but his general comment is all the lawyers generally did a good job. So it wasn't because they hated one lawyer or loved another lawyer. And as a lawyer trying these cases, great. I'm glad he feels like everybody did a good job. And this guy, and hopefully this jury, based it completely on the evidence. To be frank, you can't prove most things 100%, not even in science. I agree. That's why it's not 100%. But sometimes when you argue that burden, if you get a jury to think it's 100%, then it sounds a little bit like this.
They presented their case as well.
The police, you say the investigation was poor. The defense said it was more than poor, it was corrupt, and they pointed to the lead detective who had been fired, didn't testify in your trial. Did that have an impact? And did you think it was a corrupt police investigation?
Do I think it was a corrupt police investigation? I don't know. There's no way.
I love the fact that the defense convinced this jury to not ask questions they do not need to answer. And frankly, I'm not even so sure the defense didn't ask that, because they did say it was a cover-up and things like that. But they focused on the fact that, what does that mean and what is the end result? We don't have the answers we need, and that means not guilty. And he's sitting there like, I don't know. I don't know if it was corrupt, right? It's hard for me to play into the attentions of these people. Don San Juan, thanks for getting us through the last 2 years. Your impartial insights are second to none. I donated all I could to the cause, hoping for positive change in the Commonwealth, not holding my breath. Keep up the good work, sir. Lawyer, you know, mourning for life. Chris, you stoke civil pride and serve the common good. Thank you. Plug. Got to have dozen MVP Minahan on Unnamed this morning. He said he may dig into John O'Keefe. He's 2 for 2 on M solved so far. Oh boy. I'll have to take a listen to that. Yeah, I know. I played a clip from that earlier when they kind of just mentioned it. They haven't really talked about it much, I don't think. If they have, send me the clips. I'd love to hear it. I'll have to check that out. And Chris, somebody else followed this up with, Peter, who is going to win the dozen tournament? So will it be the experts year? It kind of feels like it. I love the booze ponies. I don't think they're taking it home this year. I would say experts would be my first guess. Minahan's team would be my second guess. We'll see. We'll see.
For me to know, I wasn't there. There was just
Back it up.
he was a
So we get he's asking about the corrupt police investigation.
Do I think it was a corrupt police investigation? I don't know. There's no way for me to know. I wasn't there. There was just there was holes in the case that left for reasonable doubt. I think they could have checked some boxes or you know, done some things differently. But do I know that they were corrupt? Absolutely not. I don't know that there was any corruption going on. But do I know that
they were corrupt? Absolutely not. I don't know that. Rebecca said, it's not uncommon to pick a professional for the jury. I was actually picked on a drug case, knowing all the law enforcement officers. Yeah, I'm not saying it's unusual. I'm saying if I was saying Brendan, I would not have want one on this jury. And it is unusual for lawyers to end up on juries. Other professionals, sure. But lawyers, it is unusual. I just texted my friend, I can't talk right now because I'm watching my lawyer. Why was it called back? It had to do with the OUI, but what about it? Does that mean everything except the OUI part was the same? I think even the OUI part was the same, but maybe they had to discuss it a little bit more. If I was going to take some context clues from what he said, that's what it sounded like to me.
that there wasn't enough proof or evidence secured by the police to convict Karen Reed? Absolutely not. There was not.
Fair to say that your view was that her SUV did not make contact with O'Keefe, therefore she did not kill him, but you don't know how he died.
I would say that.
You know what I really like? He takes a beat. He takes a second to think before he gives his answer, and sometimes even repeats the question back as he's giving his answer. I like that.
Died.
I would say that's fair to say. I don't know how John O'Keefe died, and I do not believe that there was a collision between the SUV and John O'Keefe.
Jason, really appreciate the time. I do want to ask one other thing. Did all of the hoopla around the case, the people outside, did it give you comfort in reaching a verdict like this, that you saw there was a community behind your point of view? Or
did it give you comfort, he said, knowing this, there's this community behind you? And he gives a very interesting answer.
Was it irrelevant?
Honestly, that made the pressure a lot harder, and it did not give me comfort. It made it a lot harder to block out everything and come to decision.
Why did it make it harder?
It made it harder because all of the eyes are on us. We were told we're the most important people in the courtroom, and they keep us away from the crowds of people in the front of the courthouse. But we do see them, and I don't think that having all those people swayed me to go either way. We were only tasked with looking at the evidence.
He's like, we knew they were out there. It made our job harder. We saw them. We knew about it. So the jury knew. He said they didn't sway us, but we knew there was a lot of pressure. I mean, again, as good of an answer as you can give.
And I don't think that having all those people swayed me to go either way. We were only tasked with looking at the evidence. We were 12 jurors. We had to back up how we felt in this, for our decision. And we couldn't let any outside factors, her punishment, we couldn't factor any of that. We had to look at the evidence that was presented to us, absorb it, really understand it, and see if there's any reasonable doubt. And there was.
Jason, thank you so much for spending some time and breaking this down. Appreciate it.
How about that? I mean, that was a great interview. That was a telling and a great interview. Gigi Gordon said, I'm a retired career federal prosecutor and I would never want a lawyer on my jury. I've had one lawyer on my jury ever, and it was a pre-suit personal injury lawyer on a criminal federal trial I had, and it was a 5-week trial. He was pissed. Somebody else said lawyers are usually too busy to be on juries. He ended up getting off on like the 3rd week because he knew one of the witnesses. So it's kind of brutal for him. It's very unusual, including their paralegals, to be seated on a jury as well. I have also had one paralegal, a criminal defense paralegal, with somebody that knew my dad very well, the lawyer, and I disclosed that to the other side. It was a personal injury car accident trial that I had. She ended up making it on the jury, and it was an amazing verdict. So I was very happy with it. So those are the only two, either lawyer or paralegal, that I've ever had on any of my juries. This may be a stretch, but that's why I'm asking you, the expert. Is there any leverage here for Karen Read to file a malicious prosecution civil suit? She could theoretically file something against law enforcement or the prosecutors. In my opinion, if she came to my office, I just had this conversation, I think, with Bettero. If she came to my office and her name wasn't Karen Read and there wasn't all this public publicity, and she explained to me how it all went, how it went with the hung jury, comes back guilty on OUI, not guilty on everything else. It's not the strongest case in the world. For that, I understand all of the background. But with the publicity, it may be right for something more. Off topic, but steady media coverage of cases aren't allowed in Ireland. Could you speak on Terence Crosby case in Boston, the Irishman accused of something? In Boston last year. Anyone in the chat know anything? So I don't know what that case is, unfortunately. If there was no accident report, according to another YouTube lawyer, will the insurance company fight it? I think there's a lot of reasons the insurance company is going to fight it. The no accident report thing, we have cases like that all the time, where there's no accident report for a million different reasons, and we still are able to be successful in it. The hard part about this case is proving a collision actually happened. Why can someone be charged in civil court if the criminal court found her not guilty? Completely different burdens, beyond a reasonable doubt versus preponderance of the evidence. And completely different rules of not rules of evidence, but civil rules versus criminal rules. It's very different. It's hard to understand. It's not a double jeopardy. Thank you, Peter. Well, it's definitely not double jeopardy, because her life and liberty are not put at jeopardy when it's a civil case. It's just money, but you get it. Very sad that I just found you during this trial. Hey, Alan, we don't got to be sad about it. We're here now forever, man. Forever. There's another case to talk about. I want you here in the chat talking about it. I've been a law nerd for a few years now, but I'm glad I have another awesome law tuber to watch, and I'm pumped you're here, Alan. The nefarious Jen McCabe. Peter, I met a girl in the Court TV chat that watches you. Now that she knows we have it in common, she makes a point of mentioning you. Yesterday, she said, LYK is life. I said, yup, he's def the man, LOL. That's awesome. I love it. I love to hear this stuff. I keep seeing reporters reporting the defense theory from trial 1 as their theory for this trial. Am I reading the room wrong, or do you see this too? I have not seen a lot of that personally. I want justice that John won't get. Whoever did it will live with that. Everyone knows how they acted and will live in fear. Will one talk? Will evidence be found? Will the feds come? Worst way to live, let me know. Proctor had something to say about that we'll talk about on another video. I'm Canadian, and it's illegal for jurors to talk about their deliberations here. I wonder what your thoughts are on that. I hate that, because just because they're talking about it doesn't make it the truth, right? Whether somebody says it or doesn't say it, it still happened. So just because they're not talking about it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. So I'd rather know the truth. I'd rather get more information personally. I would imagine you have answered this, but what is your prediction on how the verdict affects the civil case? It would have been much better for John O'Keefe's family if it was guilty, but they can still go forward, and it's possible they still win even with this verdict. If this verdict does not win the civil case for Karen Read as well. Thunder or Pacers? Thunder. I've doubted the Pacers all year. I know, Destiny, it's going to hurt your heart again, but they've shocked me already, and Halliburton being hurt makes it tough. Peter, what usually helps you from these jury interviews for your own trials? To be honest, I learned more about the U.S. legal than my own country. Thanks for your time, sir. Honestly, it's what do the juries look at? What do they think? What do they find important? What do they trust? What do they not trust? How do they view reasonable doubt? What makes the big difference for them? Trusting their own eyes and ears like this guy did. And really, when they understand reasonable doubt in a case like this, you have a good chance of winning when you're the defense. He's the most perfect person to be on the jury. Do you agree with Bev's instructions to the jurors to not do an initial poll when starting deliberations? Your thoughts? A lot of judges say that. I don't necessarily disagree with it because then they don't come entrenched like, oh, I'm embarrassed to change my vote now because everybody knows how I voted. I think it can work either way, personally. This kid needs to teach jury classes. He's great and seems to have a really good head on his shoulders. Thanks for all you do, Peter. I don't think prosecutors would necessarily find this guy a perfect juror, if I was being honest. I think defense attorneys would find this guy to be a perfect juror. I think he's a great juror personally, but Cherry W. Started following you a year ago because of this case. I wanted an unbiased take on what was really going on. Now I always go to you as my baseline and develop my opinion from there. Thank you for all you do. Thank you so much, Cherry. Did you see AJ on Howie Carr's show earlier today? I heard it was happening. I heard just a snippet. I am going to listen to it eventually. The perfect example of he understood the assignment. That's right. Love being a part of your research group for trials. Hey, it's a truth. That's not a joke. That's not blowing smoke. That's the truth. Even if you think or sure the local cops are corrupt, you're not going to say that in an interview for your own safety. Sure, that's a good point too. Peter, thank you for not immediately moving on from this topic. I've been so concerned about Karen's fate for so long that it's helpful to process the aftermath before shifting focus from this. Listen, I find this stuff so interesting. It's almost like after trials, a lot of times we'll come back and do like a debrief. What did we do well? What could we do better? What happened with this, that? What do we think of the judge, the lawyer, the experts? Are we going to use them again? This courthouse, this jurisdiction, because we try, all over different cities and even different states. And that's what this feels a little bit like. And I'm interested. I'm still learning, right? And if we hear from the lawyers and jurors in this case, I'm still going to learn something. So I'm going to watch. And if you guys watch too, great. And you send it to me, we can watch it together. I'm going to watch. Whether or not I'm going to talk about it is up to you guys. If it's something you're interested in, then I'll talk about it on here. In one of the documentaries, AJ said, the trial is the jury selection. This interview shows Karen Read won months ago. I agree. I've always said that's the most important part of any trial. Next witness, not going to lie. When I heard TMZ got the first jury interview, I was so mad. Many great people have covered this case from the beginning, and TMZ barely knows anything about it. It is what it is, right? Good for them. They got it. They got it out there. The information's out there. We can still talk about it. And that's what's great about this day and age, right? We can still talk about it. We can still give our opinions, answer questions, things like that. Laura, Pita, my mother-in-law is recovering from a major surgery, and the fam is all watching together with her now. Shout to Eva Jenkins. First words to her post-op where Karen Read is free. Isn't that wild? Well, Eva, I hope you have a speedy recovery, get healthy quick, and enjoy some YouTube videos while you're recovering. Guess I'm saying on Twitter now, LOL, never was before. How about that, Michelle? How about that? I found this case very personal. On 1/31/09 at 3 a.m. in Utah, I was hit by my ex with a car, front passenger side. He left the scene. I was left, but neighbors found me. 12 staples in my head and some bruises. DV happens, but not on Karen's case. Yeah, and it sounds like very different evidence of a collision in that case, right? Thunder up. Love you here in Oklahoma. Thank you, Barb. Thank you. Tommy, hope you're having a good day, man. Thanks for the coverage. I am, Tommy. Thank you for that. It's a good one to end on. We're right back around an hour where we're supposed to be. It just feels right. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe so you can tell me what you're watching next, and we can continue on learning about the criminal justice system and hopefully making it better. Criminal and civil justice system, I should say. There was something else I was going to say to John O'Rourke, and now it slipped my mind. All right, that's all we got. Till next time, I am out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.